They are one of the most well-known criminal organizations worldwide, the Yakuza. Their code of honor, which includes body tattoos, cutting off fingers, and general respectability towards the Japanese public, have made the Yakuza quite popular in media, games, and pop culture. But where did this group originate? Here we will have a look at the birth of the Yakuza, Japan's famous and infamous Mafia. By the way, I'll probably use some footage from the video game series Yakuza, because they often enough get it spot on. For example, when beating people up with bicycles. No, seriously, this was a thing. And even more so when it comes to removing clothing. Well, maybe not so much here, though even proper Yakuza approve of the game series, so if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Right, anyways, here goes nothing. Oh, and let's pray for my Japanese pronunciation. I really tried my best.
Are you Fujiyama?
Yes, I am.
The origin of the Yakuza dates back to the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 till 1868. During this time, there was a rather strict caste system in place. There were honourable castes like government officials, citizens, or professional tradesmen, and so-called senmin, or lower citizens. And the two lowest were the tekiya and the bakuto.
That's racist. It's the true fact.
The tekiya appeared in the 1700s and are equivalent to carnies or travelling folk, people who take their trade and stall from one town to the next and sell their respective goods or services. A little translation would be peddlers. These tekiya would, nevertheless their low status, form quite strict codes of conduct for business. One of the birthplaces of the Yakuza. The travelling tekiya used a system that even modern day Yakuza still use, the oyabun kobun, a system of bosses, underbosses, and followers. The tekiya didn't just sell stuff, otherwise this wouldn't be the origin story of one of the greatest, most famous mafias, wouldn't it? The everyday line of work of the tekiya might have been rather honourable, selling goods to people. But they also engaged in activities like protection rackets and gang wars. This pariah style of life would also attract other people who were outcasts of society. And that other group that formed the Yakuza are the bakuto. The bakuto are even more so outcasts of feudal Japanese society, since they were gamblers. Gambling, until this day, is, with a few exceptions, illegal in Japan. The bakuto, therefore, were the lowest of the low, often forced to remain outside of city limits. See some European similarities here, maybe?
Fucking piker.
What you gonna pass?
10K.
Ah, me bollocks. Lose more than that running for the boss. Hey! What are you for, a caravan?
What?
Caravan!
During the 18th century, one of the most famous Yakuza customs formed here. First, the irezumi, meaning inserting ink, literally. The dealers of the cards and dice games would often show their elaborate tattoos whilst playing these card or dice games, which encouraged the modern day Yakuza to do the same. And also the tradition of yubitsume, or finger shortening, was born here. The Bakuto started most of the operations that the Yakuza ended up with: loan sharking, illegal gambling, and racketeering. The Bakuto are also the ones who left us the term Yakuza. The word Yakuza derives from the card game Ochokabu. It is rather similar to the Western card game Baccarat. The worst hand one can get dealt in Ochokabu is 8-9-3. In Japanese, Yakuza. A worthless hand, similar to the fate of a Bakuto or Tekiya at that time. Due to their role as outcasts, Bakuto and Tekiya would often attract the outcasts of Japanese society, including criminals. And thanks to the low social standing of the two groups, members of the cast would simply remain part of the Tekiya and Bakuto for generations to come. The structure of the Yakuza is still pretty much similar to that of the Tekiya. It is a hierarchy where one is known as the Oyabun, or the foster parent. The other is the Kobun, or foster child. Usually, this bond is formed by drinking from a single cup of sake. The same ritual is ironically used in a Shinto wedding. This kind of structure has remained until this day. Yakuza cut their family ties to become part of a newfound family of sorts. This new family in turn becomes their life in essence. Until this day, a lot of members of the Yakuza come from a certain background. They are in some ways still outcasts of society. There is a high number of Yakuza whose ancestors even are Bakuto or Tekiya, even though this caste system no longer officially exists. Right, so let's boil down the structure of the Yakuza. There is an overall boss, the Oyabun or Kumicho. This would loosely translate as a chairman or godfather in Western terms. Under him there are the Saikokomon, the senior advisor, and the So Honbucho, the headquarters chief. Second in command is the Wakagashira, i.e. the first lieutenant, who governs several gangs in a certain region. He does this with the help of a Fuku Honbuchu, who is responsible for the gangs and keeps an eye on local bosses, the Shategashira. The Shategashira control a local gang of Yakuza. Each member connection to one another is ranked by hierarchy. A Saikokomon, for example, usually has his own turf and underlings, which in turn again have their own turf and underlings. The ritual of drinking sake from the same cup, called Sakasuki, is a rather important ritual here. Someone who has received sake from an Oyabun is considered part of his immediate family. Someone who has received this offer can in turn offer it to someone else who is below his rank. Therefore, certain chains are created, also known as subsidiaries. This goes down to the Kyode, big brothers, and Shate, little brothers, who all answer to the higher-ups, who make sure operations are running smoothly. And at the bottom of the chain are the simple members, who answer to their respective boss, and have to earn money, which a cut of that money gets paid to the higher-ups, and so on and so on. The Yakuza are probably most known for their rituals, and a lot of them date back to the beginnings. We already touched on a few of them, so let's go into details. There are two main ones, Yubitsume and Irizumi. Finger shortening, Yubitsume, was a common practice for a long time. The idea is that if a member of the Yakuza has dishonored his family in some form, not performing a task properly, or if he is taking responsibility for the actions of those under his command, he would cut off part of his left finger. Traditionally, a tanto was used to execute this ritual. A cloth was laid underneath the tip of the left pinky, then the top portion was cut off, wrapped in a cloth, and presented to the Oyabun,
Nani? 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 Nani?
If another offence was committed, the next finger joint would be cut off. If nothing was left of the left pinky, one would move over to the right hand and the right pinky. This custom isn't too common anymore nowadays, since it's a dead giveaway that someone is a member of the Yakuza.
Nani?
It is still sometimes practiced though, and Yakuza then tend to use a prosthetic finger or fingertip. Irazumi is a practice of inserting ink, as it is literally translated. In the West, one would call it tattooing. Like in most cultures, tattooing was an ancient practice, but as early as 300 AD, tattoos had a negative connotation in Japan, being seen as a criminal element. During the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, this rule fluctuated as tattoos became more elaborate. They were still used as a form of punishment though. During the Meiji period, starting in 1868, Irazumi was banned and thus was exclusively associated with criminals, thus the Yakuza. Traditional Irazumi are picked by the bearer and the artist to match the personality of the bearer of the tattoo. The images, which are usually tattooed onto the back of a person, are layered with meaning. Dragons, tigers, snakes, flowers and plants, mythological creatures, geishas, samurais, Buddhist figures, Shinto deities, or figures from the No theatre, like the Hanya. They are meant to either enhance certain attributes or personality traits or combat negative ones. There are also other rituals the Yakuza indulge in. Playing Oichukabu is still popular. Yakuza usually take this opportunity to show off the tattoos. New members are sometimes even forced to remove their trousers to show off the full body tattoos. Beyond that, they still partake in many traditional Japanese customs, like tea ceremonies and the like. And the juniors, kohai, will act as such, lighting cigarettes of the senior senpai figures. The lower kohai in the Yakuza structure also might have to perform other duties, like bringing trays, cleaning rooms and toilets, etc., until they rise to a higher status within the Yakuza. Right, this should be enough for now. I might make a second part of this dealing with the modern aspects of the Yakuza, like their activities, their reputation within Japan, and things like murder and supposed chivalry, which is, like with all Mafia, a quite touchy subject. So, I hope you enjoyed this view on the history and the origin of the Yakuza. Subscribe for more, and as always, cheers!